Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kane and Chance rush to stop another murder. All of Kane's plotting and planning is about to blow up in his face, as his trusted manservant, Carter, clearly has an unhealthy obsession with his boss. The latest preview for Young and Restless teases that the trip to France is over, and everyone could be headed back to Genoa City in no time. We think that most of them will never want to ride a train again. Kane confronted his right-hand man after realizing that Carter had the means and intent to kill Damien. He promised to protect him if Carter would only tell him what had happened. Of course, Victor and Chance were listening around the corner in the garden maze, waiting for Carter to spill all. Coming up, Lily appears to show up at the wrong place and the wrong time, as Carter grabs her and holds her at gunpoint, lashing out at Kane that everything he had done was for him. The promo also seems to tease, "That's all, folks." When it comes to Carter, Kane tells Amanda that she was right to call the police, and that he has been found not to have done anything wrong. Well, with the exception of the fact that he enticed his adversaries to his estate, trapped them there, and subjected them to a maniac, Damien was killed, and Nick almost lost his life on the trip. Even vacations that you wish you had never taken must come to an end. As everyone's cell service suddenly returns, Victor assumes Kane has known he's lost the game. Indeed, Kane unleashes his hanger in his office. Kane may be down, but he's certainly not out. The humid Genoa City evening buzzed with tension, and Kane Ashby's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. The dread that had been growing throughout the day gained an additional layer with each new message. He had learned to put his faith in his gut since it had been screaming at him since sunrise. A terrible situation was developing. On the other end of town, Detective Chance Chancellor was already pacing the crime lab at GCPD, scanning surveillance footage from the Grand Phoenix, when his own phone lit up with a single, cryptic message from a blocked number. "It happens tonight. If you can, stop me." He read it 3 times, jaw tightening with each pass. Chance muttered, "Damn it," as he was already calling Kane. The two had formed an uneasy alliance after the Carter debacle, a pairing born not from friendship but necessity. Kane had contacts hidden from view. Chance had the badge. Together, they were the last line of defense between another corpse and the rising tide of darkness swallowing Genoa City whole. As the sun set and shadows crept through the alleyways, the scent of danger was undeniable. Elena had called earlier, her voice cracking as she talked about a memorial patient who had left a note with just the word Carter, and was missing. However, the coroner's report had stated that Carter had already passed away. Yet the threats hadn't stopped, and neither had the killings. The body count had risen steadily, each murder more theatrical and taunting than the last. Kane and Chance were always 2 steps behind whoever was playing a sick game with Carter's twisted legacy. They only had 6 hours. Perhaps less. That night's message was more than just a threat. It was difficult. And the goal? Nobody knew. No, not yet. However, Kane had instincts and Chance had theories. "We're not waiting this one out," Chance said through gritted teeth, meeting Kane behind the old Chancellor warehouse. "We go straight to the source. Audra." Kane rolled his eyes at the name all by itself. Audra Charles had been skating on the edge of disaster for weeks. Too many secrets, too many allegiances. However, she may have answers. Kane stated that she won't talk. "She will for me," Chance shot back. And he was right. No one, not even Audra herself, could comprehend why the detective had always held a special place in Audra's heart. She was pacing like she knew what was coming when they found her in her penthouse. "You're too late," she whispered, before Chance even opened his mouth. "There's nothing you can do." However, Kane was not up for solving riddles. He turned her around after grabbing her arm. "Tell us who it is. Who will die tonight?" Audra did not hesitate. She just stared. "It's a person who means a lot to you both. But you'll never guess in time." She then pressed play on her tablet, and the live footage from a hidden camera showed a blindfolded, clinging woman struggling. The camera angle was low, obscured, but Kane's blood froze as he recognized the charm bracelet on her wrist. "Lily," he gasped. Every second mattered now. Audra screamed after them as they ran out of the room. "You'll only make it worse," she cried. But the elevator was already closing. Chance was calling in a trace on the video feed, shouting coordinates to dispatch. Kane stated, "We're not waiting for backup." Chance said, "Agreed." They were directed by the coordinates to a downtown theater that had been closed since the fire last year. The perfect place for a murder, and the perfect place to hide one. They were able to see through the decay and dust with their flashlights in the pitch-black theater. Chance moved first, skillfully avoiding corners, while Kane followed with his weapon drawn. The smell of gasoline hit them like a wall. Whoever had Lily planned to end this in fire. Kane whispered, "She's here. I can feel it." And then, from behind the velvet curtain, a muffled scream. They ran. They burst into the main hall just as a masked figure lifted a match. "No!" Kane charged forward and yelled. The figure dropped the match, but Chance was faster, diving for it and snuffing it out mid-air. The figure lunged, blade glinting, but Kane tackled him mid-swing. They crashed to the ground, fists flying, until the mask slipped off, revealing someone they hadn't expected, Dominic Newman, grown colder and darker since his mother's breakdown. "Why?" Kane sputtered. Dominic cracked a bitter grin. "Due to the fact that Genoa City never paid for the harm it caused to my family. And she was the symbol of everything fake, everything broken," he said, pointing to Lily. Dominic was read his rights by Chance as he cuffed him, but the reality of what almost happened persisted in the room. Lily was safe. This time, but how many more lives would be endangered before they unraveled the full scope of this copycat killer's plans? And who was actually in charge of things? Because deep in the shadows of the actor, unseen by anyone, a red laser dot blinked twice and vanished. As Kane sat down next to Lily and gently tore off the last of her chains, sirens could be heard in the distance. She was conscious despite shaking, and her eyes were wide with shock. "It was Dominic," she whispered. Why would he?" However, Kane was not prepared to respond. Not yet. There were too many questions and too few answers. Chance had already shoved Dominic into the back of an unmarked squad car, slamming the door with enough force to make the metal echo like a death knell. But Dominic had smiled during the entire ride, like he knew something they didn't. Something much larger. And deep down, Chance knew he was right. By the time EMTs arrived and Lily was safely in their care, Kane and Chance were already reviewing everything. "It's not just Dominic," Chance said, pacing under the blinking light of the theater's broken marquee. "He's smart, but he's not a strategist. This was a performance. The script was written by someone else." Kane rubbed his jaw, then looked at the small, crimson envelope found taped to Lily's chair. He put on gloves and carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Elegant. Cursive. Cold. "Tonight was just the preview. The main act is still to come. And you've already missed rehearsal." Chance exhaled profusely. "It's a damn production to them. They are staging this like a twisted play." Kane nodded grimly. "Which means there's a director. And we've just tackled the opening scene." Dominic sat quietly in the interrogation room back at the station, staring at the wall like it had answers. Chance entered alone. No lawyers. No cameras. Just two men and a long, heavy silence. "Tell me who's behind this," Chance said calmly. "Now." But Dominic smirked. "You don't scare me, Chancellor. None of you do. I've already told you what matters. Genoa City needs a reckoning." "So you set it on fire? Did you kidnap Lily? You think that cleans the slate?" Chance's voice was rising, but Dominic remained unmoved. "You're missing it, Detective. I was just the first soldier. But the war? It's already started." Kane was waiting in the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear when Chance stormed out of the room. Kane said, turning the screen toward him, "I've got something." A second location. A van matching Dominic's rental was spotted by surveillance while Dominic was on his way to the theater and making a stop at an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Chance blinked. So he wasn't working alone. Damn it, there is a director. This time, they didn't wait for backup. They didn't have time. They arrived at the docks at midnight with no headlights on and no running engines. The old warehouse loomed in the darkness like a sleeping beast. Everything was still inside. No movement. No sounds. But Kane spotted a flickering light through a crack in the loading bay. "Flashlight." He spoke low. "No. Candle." Chance looked down. Ritualistic. Kane nodded grimly. Looks like it. They entered cautiously, guns drawn. As their eyes adjusted, they saw a grotesque scene, a makeshift shrine, photos of former Genoa city elites arranged in a pattern across the concrete floor. At the center, a single word painted in red, reckoning. Candles burned around it, casting shadows that danced on the walls like specters. And behind it all, tied to a chair with tape over his mouth, Kevin Fisher. Kevin. Chance rushed forward, cutting the restraints, while Kane scanned the space for threats. We were too late, Kevin gasped, coughing. They were present. They are too. Although I couldn't see her face, one of them knew everything about me. She knew what I did for Victor. What Chloe covered up. The Kane froze. This is bigger than revenge. It concerns secrets. Scandals. Blackmail. Kevin nodded frantically. They go by the moniker the Reckoners. They say everyone who buried the truth will be unearthed. And next, they said next it's Sharon. Chance felt sick to her stomach. Sharon was still working the late shift at Crimson Lights. Despite the fact that the Carter trauma was still fresh in her mind, she insisted on remaining strong and visible. If I hide, she told Nick, they win. She started to doubt her resolve, however, as the lights flickered and the espresso machine made an odd buzzing sound. The customers were all gone. The clock read 1:17 a.m. and a package had just been left at the door. She looked at it with suspicion. Unadorned brown packaging. No label. Sharon Newman is all that is written in black ink. She first called Nick, then Chance. But by the time they picked up another death, Chance's Law and Order, Nick's past. That necessitates the Chancery Chancellor's efforts to uphold order. Plus, Victor Newman and Nikki Newman make decisions to protect their family. Continue reading to learn more about the upcoming episodes of the CBS soap opera. Another French death. Let's get started with the death at the chateau. Fans are aware that Damian Kane was murdered previously. Now, Carter has tried to hold Nick Newman and Sharon Newman hostage. Nick suffered severe injuries in a struggle to escape. Thankfully, Sally Spectra and Billy Abbott saved the day. Read more. Find out what happened on the last episode of Y&R. After that, Carter is compelled to respond by Kane Ashby. After Carter confesses, everyone will try to make a move. However, Carter pulls out a gun and takes Lily Winters hostage. It seems that Carter will be the one who dies. He seems to be the only character who can be used up. Challenge for the Chancery Chancellor. There will be chaos following the death. Even though Chance isn't an official French detective, he knows how to keep order. Chance will also want to make sure that nobody touches any bodies or evidence until the French authorities arrive. Nick Newman's previous The Young and the Restless spoilers for Monday, July 28 reveal that Nick and Sharon will discuss their past. Despite their lengthy and complicated past, they have always stood by one another. So, maybe Nick and Sharon could talk about what comes next. Will they attempt to reconnect with one another? Additionally, it is stated that Victor and Nikki make some unexpected choices. These decisions will be aimed to protect their family. There is the chaos in Nice, Damian's death, and of course, Kane buying up all the Genoa City real estate. Nikki also learns about Victor's arrangement with Audra Charles. The news that Cole Howard passed away while everyone was away will then be shared by Claire and Victoria Newman. Additionally, there is Kane's alliance with Holden Novak. Kane may bring new plans back to GC after Nice, it appears. So, what will happen to these characters next? The call came in just after 3:17 a.m., jolting Chance Chancellor out of a restless sleep and into a storm of blue lights and blood. Another body found, another life stolen in the ever-darkening shadow falling over Genoa City. And this time, it wasn't a stranger. It was someone they all knew, someone who once smiled brightly through the corridors of Newman Enterprises and clinked glasses at the Grand Phoenix. Now found lifeless at the base of the Abbott Tower rooftop garden, her throat slashed. Her eyes frozen in a permanent stare of terror that would haunt Chance's dreams for weeks to come. Summer Newman, the Golden Daughter, gone, her death shaking the city to its very core, sending ripples through the elite who once believed they were untouchable. And with that single act of brutality, Chance knew this was no longer just a killing spree. It was a declaration of war on Genoa City's most powerful, a taunt to law enforcement and legacy alike. And as the forensics team worked the scene, And Kyle Abbott collapsed in a mix of grief and guilt, muttering something about a voicemail Summer had left him an hour before she died. Chance took one long look at the chaos and made a vow, silent and steel-bound. No more red tape, no more mercy, just justice, no matter the cost, because the system had failed too many times before. During the Carter incidents, the masked vigilantes, the corporate cover-ups that always ended with another body and another press conference that said too little, too late. And this time, he wouldn't let it happen, wouldn't let another killer slither into the shadows while the rich whispered in boardrooms and lawyers carved loopholes into law. This time, he would enforce his own brand of law and order, forged in the military, refined on the streets, and tempered by every soul he'd failed to save. But what Chance didn't realize, not yet, was that while he chased justice in the streets, a much older storm was gathering beneath his feet, one rooted not in present crimes but in the long-forgotten sins of Nick Newman, whose past was no longer content to stay buried, not with Summer's blood soaking the concrete, not when whispers of an old affair and an even older betrayal had started to resurface, names that hadn't been spoken in decades suddenly appearing on watch lists, faces from Nick's college years showing up in DMV hits and Homeland Security bulletins, suggesting that Summer's murder may have been more than just personal. It was a message, and Nick was at the center of it. And while Nick insisted to Sharon, to Victor, to anyone who would listen that he didn't know who would want to hurt Summer, there was something in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, a memory clawing at the edge of his mind like a ghost pounding at the cellar door, something from back when he was still wild and reckless, long before Sharon, before Sage, before Faith and Christian and all the women and wars in between, a secret so deeply buried he had convinced even himself it never happened, until now. And as Chance launched his operation, dubbed internally as Operation Glass Veil, designed to uncover the killer within 24 hours using every contact, every surveillance drone, and every confidential informant on the force, he couldn't shake the feeling that Summer's death wasn't the last. It was the first domino, because even before the crime scene was fully cleaned, another scream echoed across the city. Phyllis Summers, found unconscious in her suite at the Grand Phoenix, poisoned with something that couldn't be traced by normal toxicology, her pulse weak, her breath shallow. And as medics raced to stabilize her, all eyes turned toward Nick, because both women connected by blood and love to him had been targeted within 12 hours. And though he denied everything, though he insisted on being by Phyllis's side, Chance saw the tremor in his hand, the haunted silence when he asked, "What if this is because of me?" And deep in Chance's gut, something clicked, not guilt, but fear, the fear of someone who knew that ghosts don't stay buried forever. And while Victor tried to muscle his way into the investigation, declaring it a Newman matter, Chance held firm, flashing his badge like a sword, demanding autonomy and access to every Newman record, sealed or not. And while Victoria bristled and Nikki whispered about lawyers, Nick stayed quiet, withdrawn. And that silence became louder than any protest, especially when forensic techs discovered a slip of paper in Summer's pocket, water-stained and nearly illegible but still readable under infrared. He promised we'd be safe. He misspoke. Check the Yibik. Those 5 words gave everyone in the room a chill because they pointed not to recent enemies but to something old, something from high school, something hidden in plain sight.